Batas Pambansa Bilang 344, or the Accessibility Law of the Philippines, ensures that public places, buildings, and transportation are designed to be accessible and safe for people with disabilities, the elderly, and pregnant women. It requires features like ramps, wider doorways, handrails, and accessible parking spaces to make mobility easier for everyone. The goal is to promote inclusivity and equal opportunities for all by removing barriers in daily life. It is an act to enhance the mobility of disabled persons by requiring certain buildings, institutions, establishments, and other public utilities to install facilities and other devices. Rule number 1. Scope and application. Purpose. It means that no one can get permission to build, repair, or renovate any building or structure meant for public use, whether they own it or rent it, unless they include designs and plans that make the building accessible to everyone, including people with disabilities. These designs must follow specific rules and standards to ensure accessibility, like ramps, elevators, or other features that help people move around easily. Rule 1. Scope and application. It discusses its purpose and definition of terms. 3. Scope. The provisions of these rules and regulations shall apply to the following: A. Public and private buildings and related structures for public use and which shall be constructed, repaired, or renovated. B. Streets and highways and public utilities. Streets and highways, public transport vehicles, which shall include passenger buses and jeepneys. 2. Passenger trains, including those of the Light Rail Transit Authority or LRTA. 3. Domestic inter-island vessels. And 4. Domestic aircraft of air carriers. Public telephones and public transport terminals, including those of LRTA. 4. Application. Public and private buildings and related structures for public use. In simple terms, this means that no one can get permission to build, repair, or renovate any building or structure meant for public use, whether they own it or rent it, unless they include designs and plans that make the building accessible to everyone, including people with disabilities. These designs must follow specific rules and standards to ensure accessibility, like ramps, elevators, or other features that help people move around easily. The local government office in charge of building permits, called the Office of the Building Officials or OBO, will not allow construction to begin if the submitted building plans do not meet the basic rules and standards required by the law. Building and related structures to be constructed. The areas of a building where its main purpose or activities happen, like a lobby, classroom, or store, must be accessible to people with disabilities. This includes making it easy for them to enter, exit, and use the facilities. However, if the building's main purpose can be served on the ground floor, where people enter, and that level is already accessible, then other floors don't necessarily need to meet the same accessibility requirements. For government-owned housing, 10% of the total units must be designed to accommodate people with disabilities. If, after calculating 10%, the result includes a fraction greater than half, like 3.6 units, it must be rounded up to the next whole number, which is 4 units. An example will be the total units of a building or a space is 105. So we multiply it by 10%, which is 10.5. This is a fraction. It will be rounded up to 11, which is a whole number. Because there's no such thing as half unit, is there? Renovated structure. Any function areas of new designs or plans of structure to be reconstructed should be barrier-free. Access to elevator, accessible at any other level, should have a clearance minimum of 800 mm or 0.80 meters. Exception: emergency areas are not subject to barrier-free access, like hallways that provide fire hose cabinets and fire extinguishers. Providing signage for directing access should meet the standards of this code. On streets, crowded curbs and ramps should be constructed using non-skid floor materials to aid the sight-impaired and persons using wheelchairs. Audiovisual street signs and aids for pedestrian crossing, overpasses and underpasses may be waived. For existing streets and highways that have to be repaired and renovated, part of the entire pedestrian crossing should be included. On transport vehicles for public use, public transport and facilities must provide seats and audiovisual aids for persons with disabilities. These requirements apply to buses, boats, ships, airplanes, trains, existing vehicles, and those under renovation. Public telephones must include accessible units, and transport terminals must meet accessibility standards for public buildings. Parking area and slots. Strategically locate parking areas near from and to building entrance and exits. Telephone booths accessible for disabled persons. Provide one telephone booth on particular place and shall be accessible to disabled person.
Rule 2. Minimum requirements for accessibility. Design criteria. So here are the 5 categories of persons with disability. First, physical mobility required using wheelchair. Second, difficulties in walking, need braces or crutches, amputation, arthritis, and other illness. Third, individuals who are deaf and blind. Fourth, conditions of aging and incoordination. Fifth, developmental, behavioral, and emotional disabilities. Rule 3. Specific requirements for buildings and related structures for public use. These are the classification of building by occupancy. Category 1, residential. Category 2, commercial and industrial. Category 3, educational and industrial. Category 4, agriculture. Category 5, ancillary. Architectural features and facilities. So these are the architectural design requirements in accordance with generally accepted architectural practice. Accessibility features. Ramps. Given here in Figure A, the ramp dimensions. Accessible ramps. It should be equal or flatter than 1:12. Handrails on both sides are 0.90 meter high and 0.70 meter high measured from ramp floor to top handrail. Maximum length is 6 meter. Provision of 1.50 meter minimum landing between every 6 meter length of ramp. Clear width is 1.20 meter. Curbs are 100 mm high. Rails and grab bars. Handrails shall be installed both on the sidebar of ramps and stairs and should not obstruct pedestrian traffic. Handrails shall be installed 900 mm and 700 mm above ramps and stairs. It should have 0.30 extensions at the start and end of handrails. Corridors. Clear width of 1,500 mm. Turnabout space of 1,800 mm by 1,800 mm and maximum of 12,000 mm. At every dead end of corridor within 3,500 mm turnabout space shall be provided.
Their dimension of toilet cubicle, 1.70 meters by 1.80 meters. Water closet, 0.40 meters measured from the center of the toilet bowl to the face of adjacent wall. Permit easy passage of wheelchair, 1.50 meters turning space. Door swing out, clear opening of door is 0.80 meters. Accessible toilet accessories, tilted mirror, lever type faucet, lavatory is 0.80 meters high with knee space between 0.60 meters to 0.70 meters underneath. Standard of accessibility for special type of facilities. Seating for the disabled shall be accessible from the main lobby to primary entrances. In all assembly places where seating accommodation is provided, there shall be spaces for the disabled persons as provided. When the seating capacity exceeds 500, An additional wheelchair seating space shall be provided for each total seating capacity increase of 100 seats. Readily removable seats may be installed in these spaces when such spaces are not required to accommodate wheelchair users. Seating capacity of 4 to 50 has a wheelchair seating space of 2, 51 to 300, 4, 301 to 500, 6. Rule 4. Requirements for public transportation. Land transportation. These shall refer to buses having a minimum seating capacity of 50 persons for regular buses and 40 persons for air-conditioned buses. Rail transportation. These shall refer to the 3 railway system in the country. Water transportation. These shall refer to the domestic passenger ships, ferry boats, and other water transportation. No franchise or permit to operate public transportation units shall be granted, issued, or renewed unless such units are constructed or renovated in accordance with the requirements. If feasible, all owners or operators of existing public transportation utilities shall modify or renovate their units to accommodate disabled persons. The construction or renovation of public transport utilities covered by these rules shall be subject to compliance with the body designs and specifications. Posters or stickers shall be conspicuously displayed inside the units. Public transportation shall have designated seats for disabled persons. Regular buses shall have at least 5 designated seats for disabled persons. First class, premier, and air-conditioned buses shall have at least 4 designated seats for disabled persons. Passenger trains shall have at least 6 designated seats for disabled persons. Passenger airplanes shall have at least 2 designated seats for disabled persons. For provincial buses, regular and air-conditioned buses, passenger trains, and airplanes, designated seats can be occupied if no disabled persons occupy these seats. Jeepney shall have at least 2 seats for disabled persons. Allocate on a per-class basis areas for disabled passengers. These areas shall be nearest to the entrance and/or exit doorways or the vessels. Give priority to disabled passengers, embarkation and disembarkation through the alignment of time windows. The designated seats shall be identified by the international symbol of access. Owners or operators of city buses operating in high urbanized cities shall install in their units audiovisual aids such as buzzers, bell, flashing light to inform the driver of any alighting passenger. At least one deck on passenger ships shall be provided with accessible ramps, passageway, and access to gangways, galleys, and safety equipment. Rule 5. Administration and Enforcement. Buildings and related structures including public transport terminals, streets and highways, Land Transportation, Franchising and Regulatory Board, Land Transportation Office, Philippine National Railways and the Light Rail Transit Authority, Maritime Industry Authority, Philippine Ports Authority, Civil Aeronautics Board, and Air Transportation Office.
Section 46 of RA 727, also known as the Magna Carta for Disabled Person, stipulates that anyone who violates the rules and regulations of this act shall face penalties. For the first violation, a fine of 50,000 or more may be imposed, with imprisonment for up to 2 years or more at the discretion of the court. For subsequent violation, a fine of 100,000 or more may be imposed, with imprisonment for up to 2 years or both at the discretion of the court. Abuse of these privileges may result in imprisonment for up to 6 months or a fine 50,000 or both. If the violator is a corporation, organization, or similar entity, the official directly involved will be liable. If the violator is an alien or foreigner, they will be deported immediately after serving their sentence without further deportation proceedings. Individuals liable for any violation of the Act. For buildings, establishments, structure, owner or operator of the building, establishment or structure contractor, architect, engineer, building official, or other public official in charge with the insurance of building, permit, registration, certification, and/or inspection of the building, establishment, or structure. For air, land, and sea transportation, bodybuilders, safety officer, engineering, managers, drivers, conductors, and conductresses, public official in charge with the insurance of permits, registration, certification, and inspection of the public transportation. The accessibility law of the Philippines mandates signage and symbols to ensure public spaces accommodate persons with disabilities. These include the International Symbol of Access, ISA, which designates accessible routes and facilities, and tactile signs including braille and embossed symbols installed at a height of 1.5 meters from the floor. Tactile floors indicators guide visually impaired individuals through directional warning or positional indicators. Signages should maintain a luminous contrast of at least 30% from the background and non-glare finishes to enhance visibility. The dimensions of symbols, letters, and numbers depend on the viewing distance and ensuring readability from various ranges.